Yeah, good day, Prof. In this video, I'll be talking about realism, right? Realism is the name given to a group of theories that emerged in the United States after the Second World War, right? It was especially popular in the United States international relations as it provided the main guide for the US foreign policy during the second half of the 20th century when the United States and the Soviet Union were in a more or less permanent state of war from around 1948 to around 1991. Right. So, in talking about realism, right, the realism, we have three fundamental ideas or concepts of realism. So, in a bid to analyze state behaviors, the realist school of thought came up with the following assumption, whereby it is based on three assumptions, which is statism, survivor, and then self-help. Right. So after that, we also have branches of realism, right, where we have the classical realism, we have the structural realism, right. So the classical realism states that its argument is that the argument of classical realism is that human beings, right, they are very, very aggressive and acquisitive beasts unless controlled by some form of dominant ruler or government. So human nature holds the key to understanding war and conflict. So if you wish to understand the causes of war and conflict, you have to critically study human nature, as therein lies the answer, right? In the absence of a central power or government to control our aggressive instincts, the human life is therefore solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So here on the classical realism, right, they concluded on the basis that war is a natural product of flawed human nature, right, operating in an ungoverned and insecure international system environment. So they came up with a particular saying that war stems from flawed human nature. So the propounder of this particular theory is Hans Mogeto and Thomas Hobbes. So they are the proponents of this classical realism. So talking about the structural realism, which emerged in 1970, right, and it focused more on the systematic rather than individual causes and human nature. States, in particular, they are the victims of the security dilemma, right, in which one state's effort is to ensure its survival. They also threaten the security of states around, which, according to Kenneth Watts, right, according to Watts, the only rational actions for a state in an anarchical international system is to maintain enough military and political power in order to defend itself against exogenous aggression. So unfortunately, the step forward towards self-defense will appear threatening to neighboring states, forcing them to respond with their own military build-up and then an alliance making. So here they conclude that in the absence of a world government, states condemned to exist in an environment of mutual mistrust, where one state's declaration of seeking armed strength for purely defensive reason is certain to be met with suspicion by its neighbor. So that's the proponent of this theory, which is the security dilemma, is Kenneth Watts, right? So to summarize everything, right? Summarize everything on realism. Realism is one of international relations dominant theoretical traditions, and it focuses mainly on explanations of conflict and war. Like I said earlier, right from the beginning of the video, it focuses on explanation of conflict and war in the international system. So focusing on political and military relations between states, it assumes that these actors it assumes these actors to be sovereign insofar as they possess international autonomy and domestic hegemony, right? So these similar units compete for survival. They compete for survival. So in an anarchic international system, pushed into self-help activity either by their Hobbesian human nature that's the classical realism, or by the anarchic structure of the system itself. That's the structural realism. So in conclusion, right, they narrowly focused on conflict and war. So realism has had a major impact on the practice of international relations through its influence on Cold War, the Cold War U.S. foreign policy, and it remains a cornerstone, right, for of one of our disciplined understanding of the world. All right, thank you, Prof.